Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl in a small village on the edge of the forest with her mother and father. Everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood because she always wore a red riding hood. One day, her mother called Little Red Riding Hood and said, "My daughter, you know your grandmother's very sick. Can you take her the cake, the custard, and a bowl of butter?" "All right, Mom," said Little Red Riding Hood. She brought a basket to put the butter, cake, and custard. When the basket was ready, the little girl got dressed and said goodbye to her mother. "Be careful. Don't idle around your way, and please don't talk to strangers. The woods are dangerous," her mother warned her. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll be careful," answered the little girl. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother was living alone in a small, cute cottage in the woods outside the village. The little girl had passed the forest many times alone, and she knew the way, and she wasn't scared at all. She started to walk cheerfully, enjoying the sunlight and the blue sky. The birds were singing on the trees. However, when Red Riding Hood saw the beautiful flowers in the forest, she forgot her promise to her mother. She picked some flowers, watched the butterflies, and listened to the croaking of the frogs. Little Red Riding Hood was enjoying the warm summer day so much that she didn't notice the sly and dark shadow approaching her. As she was going through the forest, she suddenly met with a wolf. Little Red Riding Hood did not know how cruel and greedy he was. That's why she wasn't scared of him. "Hello, little girl," said the wolf. "Thank you," answered the girl. "Where are you going so early?" "I'm going to see my grandmother." "What's in the basket?" "Cakes and custard. My grandmother has to eat something good to feel stronger because she is really sick." "Where does your grandmother live?" "She lives beyond the forest. Her house is under the 3 oak trees." "You must know there," said the little girl. Then she realized how late she was and quickly excused herself, rushing down the path to her grandma's house. The wolf told himself, "How young she is. It's better to eat her than eating an old woman. I must hurry to eat both of them." The wolf, in the meantime, took a shortcut and ran straight to Grandma's house before the little girl arrived. And then he knocked at the door of the house. "Who is it?" asked the old woman. The wolf tried to talk like the little girl. "I am Red Riding Hood. I brought you some cake and some custard, Grandma. Can you open the door?" "Oh, thank goodness, dear. Come in, come in. I was worried sick that something had happened to you in the forest," said her grandma, thinking that the knock was her granddaughter. The wolf let himself in. Grandma was surprised when she saw a wolf in her house and tried to escape, but she was too old to run. Poor Granny did not have time to say another word before the wolf gobbled her up. The wolf closed the door and dressed one of her nightgowns. He added a frilly sleeping cap and wore Granny's perfume behind his pointy ears. Then he started to wait the little girl. A few minutes later, Red Riding Hood knocked the door. The wolf jumped into bed and pulled the covers over his nose. "Who is it?" he called in a cackly voice. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. I brought you some cake, custard, and butter." "Oh, how lovely. Do come in, my dear," answered the wolf when Little Red Riding Hood entered the little cottage. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning, honey," the wolf replied. "Grandmother, your voice is very strange. Is something wrong?" Little Red Riding Hood asked. "I just got cold," whispered the wolf, and then coughed to prove it. The wolf was trying to hide his face under the cover. "Put what you brought on the table and come near me." Little Red Riding Hood put them on the table and approached her grandma. But her grandmother seemed a little strange to her. "Grandma, what big arms you have. The better to hug you, dear." "Grandma, how big legs you have. The better to run, honey." "But grandmother, what big teeth you have. said Little Red Riding Hood, her voice quivering slightly. "The better to eat you with, my dear," roared the wolf, and he leapt out of the bed and began to chase the little girl. Little Red Riding Hood realized that the person in the bed was not her grandmother, but a hungry wolf, and she ran to the door with fear, as loud as possible. "Help me, wolf!" But the wolf caught the little girl and choked her down. The wolf satisfied his hunger and went to bed again. He felt tired, and he fell asleep and started snoring loudly. A woodcutter who was chopping logs nearby heard the wolf's voice. "How does an old woman snore so loudly?" he thought. He saw a wolf in a bed as he looked from the window of the house. He thought the wolf might have eaten the old woman. Maybe she could still be saved. He took a pair of scissors and cut his belly. After a while, the woodcutter successfully saved the grandmother and the granddaughter. Greedy Wolf swallowed grandma and granddaughter before chewing. The Little Red Riding Hood just filled the wolf's belly with big stones. The wolf woke up and wanted to run away, but the stones were too heavy to carry, and the woodcutter carried the wolf deep into the forest where he wouldn't bother people any longer. Finally, all three were pleased. Little Red Riding Hood got the lesson from this event. From now on, I will always keep my mother's words, and I will not speak to the people I do not know. I will not idle around my way again, she said to herself. The woodcutter, grandmother, and Little Red Riding Hood ate the cake, custard, and butter together with pleasure.